One of the cornerstones of Vorthos culture is the active appreciation of the game's art. As we enter a golden age of alternate arts and an expanding range of visual art styles, there's a lot to get excited about. But as the following conversation will prove, getting the most out of MTG art takes a keen eye and a certain level of experience. There's plenty of secrets hiding in plain sight. Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast where we talk about all things magic flavour, design and lore. I'm your host Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And today we have a very special guest on the show. He's not show creator, he's a magic art aficionado, he's an all-round flavour guy. We have on the show today Vorthos Mike. Hello Mike.
Hello, happy to be on with some London gents and talk some flavour, talk some art, absolutely.
Yeah, nice one. So, I think it's fair to say that you're one of the go-to guys if you're talking about magic art in the sort of larger magic community. Would you say that's fair?
I'd say that's a fair statement, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And today what we are going to be talking about, mainly, although as these things always go, we'll probably end up talking about 100 other things, is we're talking about the kind of explosion in accessible alternative arts in Magic mainline sets. And this is very good timing. I was talking to you before we started recording, because we've just had the double masters announced for the one of the upcoming sets this year, which in that set has a bunch of alternate arts for huge Magic staples. So I think one of them is Blightsteel Colossus by Wayne Reynolds. Is that correct?
That is correct. A good old man from Leeds himself.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, I think it just goes to show that there's something at the moment which is going on where Wizards have, over the past, I'd say since War of the Spark, really, that's where I'd start it from, have really made like a giant push towards having different arts in their sets that aren't just promo arts, but they're accessible in the sets for players to have if they want them. And I know that you have you had a lot to say about this. You've written a few articles. You write articles for Cool Stuff Inc. And one of your most recent articles was talking about how there was a select few people that really made this push towards having like a very different style, like kind of come into the art world. And yeah, we just thought we'd have you on today and kind of chat about that and what you think about it all.
Right. Well, first thing is people need to realize this isn't new. It's people paying attention now, I would say, is more visible because it's ubiquitous. I think the same thing goes of, well, all art looks the same. It's like, well, that argument I used to really engage with people on, Reddit or Twitter. And now it's an intro that they're finally starting to look at art. Yeah. And normally they just didn't at all. They just looked at their constructed decks. And that piece of, well, art looks the same is now actually becoming more rare. Largely because of efforts like this. This actually started years and years and years ago. FNM promos. I mean, remember those? They had alternate arts and they were really all over the place in what they beat, but they still looked similar with the general, not hyper realistic, but more imaginative realism is the term, the Tyler Jacobson sort of look, And it started with masterpieces, where they started to say, all right, let's remake some jams of cards people want to play in cubes, people want to play in constructed formats, and we can't add this to a set. You can't add Dark Ritual, like that ain't gonna happen, homie. You can't add Cabal Ritual, you can't do that. So, okay, well, let's not use the same art because, it doesn't really fit what we're doing anymore. So maybe let's add different art. Well, let's have a different little frame too. And then just kind of see how that shook out. And masterpieces, for whatever they're worth, really was the first stance where they were given latitudes by players. Yeah. And players were like, well, these are super hype. They're super rare. Ghost, Hollow Foil, Yu-Gi-Oh, whatever. And even they weren't enough. People were like, no, I want Quentin Hoover. I want comic book style. I want all black, everything black, San Diego Comic-Con.
Exactly.
Until you play with those at Cube some evening, 2 spirits in, you're kind of tired. You can't read those.
You have no idea what's going on.
You got 2 pints in with your lads. Like, ain't going to happen. But it was a great start. Like, it was tests all along these ways. And there was about maybe 5 people. And the largest being Sideshow Draba, Robert Draba, which he just goes by Sideshow. And he was really the one pushing behind the scenes to really say, hey, Magic is going to expand into a TV show. Magic is going to expand into anime. Magic is going to expand into movies. We can't just be bullseye art style Tyler Jacobson.
Yeah.
Like, you look at Cartoon Network right now, there's all sorts of crazy, weird styles of art.
Yeah, kids are seeing so many different forms of animation and that kind of thing. So, I mean, why not integrate it?
Totally. And of anything, Wizards should just be open to it first. So we started slipping stuff in. Just quiet, like poster here and a poster, and everyone's like, ha, 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 that's cool. And now, your boy Dan Mumford is just everywhere. And they're like, yo! And they're like, homie, he was here like years ago.
Yeah, so why were you paying attention?
Well, this is it. I mean, Dan Mumford's a really good example because you're 100% right. Before, so your article released on the 13th on Cool Stuff, and I think there was nothing in there which I completely didn't know about in terms of Dan Mumford's like promo art for Shadows of Innistrad and Eldritch Moon. But it's definitely not something I didn't put two and two together because when his key art came out for Ikoria. And we'll be talking a lot about Ikoria today as well, because that's obviously the star's just gone ham in that one. I mean, I was thrilled with a lot of the Vivian key art that came out in the comic book style, and like the color palette was like really like early Watchmen and early like Hellraiser with like the pinks and the yellows, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't put two and two together. And then he did the Secret Lair, didn't he? He did the panoramic one.
Yeah.
But other than that, he hasn't been on a Magic card though, has he? Like as far as I'm aware of. No. So I mean, he's everywhere, but also he's not actually on the battlefield, which I think is kind of interesting.
Right, and I think that's how it should be. I think that art styles where we're at, I like to call it a bullseye, right? And the center dead set bullseye is like Tyler Jacobson. Like, you look at his art, and it's like, yup, that is Magic. Like, no art student gets confused. You know, he draws a dragon, or the Oct art, or some of his Dominaria stuff, which is just lovely. And you're like, yep, that's Magic, I get it. The outer part of that bullseye is where a Dan Mumford can fit. Your boy Seth McKinnon, the Canadian Wonder Boy, can fit. Therese Nielsen can fit.
Rebecca Guy, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Where they still fit the brand, but what Wizards has been actively doing, and I've talked to some people internally on this, is they can find a lot of people in the center of the bullseye. That's not hard to do. It's finding people that are in between them and Seb, or in between that, where they have a very strong sense of style.
But it's relatable.
That's relatable. That looks, instead of like, oh, this only can be a promo. This can only be a Godzilla art. This can only be Andrew Huerta's really flat comic style.
Like his gem razors, his snapbacks.
Exactly. And those are phenomenal. But you can't have a full set of those because then it's no longer Magic Central Core.
Now, one of the first things I've got read out of here is like that with the advent of like such a strong Commander community, this idea of pimping your deck is where I think a lot of these can be pushed. Because this idea of having something, you can have the normal card. I say the normal card with the typical quote marks, but you want that special card to feel extra special. If everything in your deck if you can have a whole set of it, then it doesn't make it quite so elevated and fancy anymore.
Let me point that out to you. Say there was a whole set of, if you're vanilla all the time, you get a scoop of chocolate, or whatever kind of weird custard that you have all over there from France.
Raspberry Ripple, please, thank you.
Yeah, right. If you had a whole set of it, it's no longer special at all to do that. And then how do you return to that set? Like if the thread was all like Dan Mumford, if you go back, what if Dan Mumford's busy?
Yeah.
Then it's like, how do we describe this? And I think some of that is the Lorwyn issue of everybody wants watercolor set. Absolutely. Thing is, Omar Rand, he's kind of a big deal now. Or Larry McDougall, they're busy. Yeah. They're just not going to pump out 15 cards for you anymore, man.
No, we barely got him back for a adventure card, didn't we? So.
Right. So I think that piece of how do you have that unique visibility of a set, and then you have to return to the set in the future, sure. But the variant of art is still, it's something new because of new leadership. And the new leadership is from the digital side. The game is free, but the cosmetic things are expensive. That is Magic Tabletop learning from digital games that model, not loot boxes necessarily, but the idea of, oh, you want to have the super swag blinged out version? Okay, we learned that from the digital game. It still costs a quarter, whatever. Like, Blood Gas is not an expensive card. Everybody got that in their trade binder. But the Dan Mumford one, that one's hard to find.
Yeah, exactly.
But then I suppose that's the difference in it between these artworks being included like in something like a Secret Lair, which is a premium like whale geared product, right? Where that's the premium that you're paying for. But it's I think I don't know how negatively it might affect the game, but me just as a player that does like a sort of screamy fangirl face whenever I see like new artwork come out for something. The fact that they've included a lot of these in booster packs, or to a lesser extent the collector's boosters, where the distribution is actually quite high. And I mean, I've opened up 16 packs of Ikoria and paper, and I've got like 5 or 6 different of the artworks, and they're not super expensive to buy. So there's obviously more of a market maybe than Wizards originally thought for all this kind of stuff.
Well,
right?
I think you hit that a nail on the head, and I think they learned that from Masterpieces, that they were so hard to get, it actually had a negative effect. Because then it was like, you remember your first Masterpiece, and that's great, but realistically, you should think of multiples. Like, oh yeah, I've got this in non-foil, or ooh, you got the foiled Japanese one, yo, you got this foil one, yo. In like a play group, in not like around Harryuya or around like a major game shop, we're talking about the many. Those random Commander players living in Middle America. They should have a Commander deck with a couple, not all,
sure,
but a couple, because then they're still picking up product. Because that's the worry: is you buy one Commander Precon, you buy a couple of singles online, and then you stop buying. That's the problem. Yeah, so if they can find ways for the every user to pick up a pack here and there, you're at Tesco or Costco or Target or something, pick up a pack or two, and you still have this thing, this unique art. It forces you to re-engage, so you never become an alumni player. It keeps you active.
Yeah, I was looking at this idea of like exclusivity versus availability. You still want these cards to feel like they're something special, but you don't want it to be so unattainable that it's just not made for you. I think that's the big difference between, say, like doing something like a Secret Lair where you actively seek out this expensive product compared to, as you say, dropping in extended borders and things like that into your regular sets to make your average card potentially feel a bit more special. Your average pack potentially feel a little bit more special.
Right. Then I should ask you, you two guys, that do you feel that the art is the greater driver of that hype, that variety, or do you think it's the border and frame?
That's a really good question. I'll tell you what, like all of the discourse that I've seen, regardless of whether people have liked the art or not, the thing that's become most controversial is usually the border. So if you look at something like, I'm just going to use Eldraine as an example, because they've done this in a couple of sets now, where they've had the showcase border, where it's the super fancy border, and then they have the extended art, not the borderless art, but the extended one where they kind of stretch the image out to the sides. Or I think for these box toppers for Double Masters, they are actually fully borderless as opposed to extended or stretched art. That's always the thing that kind of gets commented on. So I suppose it's the borders, right? Like people can live with an artwork they don't necessarily enjoy. But I mean, if you look at the white border dispute between EDH players or whatever, like that's a classic example. It could be the same artwork, but because if it's got a white border, some people don't want to know.
Can you imagine that if all like the new Godzilla lands were all white border?
I wish they did it. I wish they fucking did it.
Oh. Well, for me, it's I agree with Borg. So I was looking through the Secret Lairs, and one of the ones that really popped out was the Khazali Slingers artwork, and it looks very similar to the same kind of style they did with the illustration quality they did for the showcase ones for Eldraine, but it doesn't feel weird. If you look at it, it still sits and it looks right as the card, but then you look at some of the showcases, and they can be very polarizing. I think as we spoke about this last week, does it feel like a Magic card thing? Does it instantly make your eyes and your brain go, "Oh, what is that?" instead of, "Oh, what's that?" Like, is there aversion, or is it incentive? Is it teasing you? Like, there are some cards that I see that I'm like, "Oh, that's beautiful, I love it," and I feel like the borders have a greater chance to capture my attention, but they also have a greater chance to make me kind of go, "No, I don't really like that." Sorry.
That's interesting. It's almost like the borders are the visceral, and then the long term becomes the art. Because I think now, people really hated the original. What was it, Amonkhet borders.
Oh,
Oh, the
right,
Invocations.
yeah, the Invocations, 100%. Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
People really, really disliked them, like hated them, and now people are like, "Oh yeah, they're fine, they're cool," you know. And now you look for like, "Oh, I want to get the weird art with it."
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of I think the main problem I've had for those was that the artworks were really interesting, but because they was that little bit smaller, because they seemed like they were just because the rest of the frame popped out, it made the art kind of fall back. And I have an opposition, and it's a shame because, especially with the foiling effect, sometimes it just doesn't give you quite as much of that art that you want. Like, especially with things like Vindicate, beautiful art.
But that's why these full arts are so popular. Like the full arts that they're just releasing with the Ikoria like sort of comic book styles or these new double masters ones is because it's all art. Do you know what I mean? But it's still playable. It's not like those full art promos which they did like Cryptic Command where you might not know what the hell the fucking card does. Like these are playable but with the most amount of art possible, and it works. You know.
Right. But I push back on that. I really do.
Oh really?
I think the established player base is the perfect fit for those people that, they're not buying a box every set anymore. They're not doing that. They got their legacy deck, they have their vintage deck, whatever. I think those are the perfect people for textless promos. Like right now, did you know Dark Ritual does not have a full art version?
Really?
Wow. That's actually
That's amazing. That is amazing.
There's utterly no reason for that. But like that card is just one
it's
example.
so iconic, yeah.
Totally.
Also, and the thing is, that point of which of the artworks do you take, or do you do a whole new one and you have to make it as iconic as all of the other ones are?
Or you don't, or you do it. So you have a great variety of styles in that. Because again, if you want health in game to continue, you want to have something for every player. And if it's something that's a little more exclusive, whale-esque as you mentioned, I think there's that list you could go through to say, Oubliette needs a reprint. Well, you can do a full art reprint of that, no text, and the card's fine. Seriously, like that is the way around it because the Path to Exile just did it.
Yeah, Animate Dead as well. Instead of having to have all nonsense garbled things, a very simple effect. You know what it does. Put that on a full art. Yeah,
exactly right. So that list, I do know people are very cognizant of looking through that because I've been asked by a couple folks on it. To be fairly honest with it. Like Sylvan Tutor, like no one really had that on their radar until a couple people.
That got me. Yeah, that got me.
I remember talking about this. I reached out and said, "Oh, if you're going to be making promos, here's the list, man. Like Worldly Tutor is clearly it just spiked. That needs new art. It only has one art version, no foil. And
it's white border as well, I believe, isn't it? There's one that's white border.
There's a black border in Mirage.
But
but like that sort of thing is perfect ground where okay, let's fit this into a new set. Maybe it could be flavorful, like the card Phyrexian Arena. Well, that doesn't make any sense anymore storyline wise, so they reskinned it in Conspiracy 2 to be Koth fighting the Phyrexian, so you get like a flavor.
Yeah, great little bit of flavor text. Fantastic.
Yeah, preview, and yet people will be like, okay, this drives the price of all of the versions down. And some people might be like, yeah, I don't want the Urza version. I want the flavorful Koth version instead. And I think that sort of way to integrate cards that aren't in base sets, not in expansion sets, that you can have this list of, okay, these are going to be judge foils. These are going to be convention promos. I've talked about that to try to get them into my art shows where it's a card you need 4 of, not 1 of, so that you go through the art show multiple times. That was the big takeaway we got out of the Tokyo Art Show. They had Sarah Angel as a promo, which is cool, don't get me wrong. But nobody's out there trying to get 4 Sarah Angels.
Yeah, who's playing it, exactly.
Yeah, who's playing
Angel Tribal.
Exactly right.
And you're going proper all the way out. Yeah, I guess it's similar why they did like the 4 different art styles for Thalia, for example. Like they know that people are playing play sets of it. They know it's a nice character. They know it's a character people want. And I like the fact they got back the artists as well to come and do some new treatments for it.
Right, which you're going to see more of.
Which is good.
I do know both on and off the record that there's a very real push to have artists that are like, man, stop reprinting that same artwork, baby. Like, just rehire.
Give us something new. Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing worse than having 3 different artworks for a play set of cards.
Right. It's also irritating. But I do know that's going to be a push in the next year or two, where some artists say, like, I'd love to get this. I'd love to get another chance at this. If you reprint this, can you hire me to do it? And that's coming. I do know in the Commander Anthology, we will see a little of that. And I think it's the right move where people don't have to say like, well, I like this artist and that's why I play this version. Oh, it's the same person and now I get to choose either one.
Yeah, and you don't have to.
That's such a phenomenal community building thing. And then you can say, oh, do I want the OG old border baby, or do I want the new hotness with the foil? Same artist, art looks similar. Like, well, how does it do? So, I mean, those sort of things are just soaking up from community feedback, and then implementing it into where does it fit, where does it not. And I think that did not happen 10 years ago, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, there's a bit more. I don't want to say the word pandering, but because obviously it's a business model to make sure you do things that your customers want you to do. But it does feel like they're playing a little bit more respect and homage. It's also funny to see that the textless. I didn't really notice, but the textless versions have dropped off significantly in number.
They really have.
Obviously, they didn't do any for for almost 10 years, and they've only just brought them back a couple of times. So I'd be really interested to see those come out, as you say. I hope they do, because that was a very specific. And that's where I think exclusivity is good, because you want to feel like I don't need you to write down on the text. I know what cryptic command does. I know all the you want that feeling. Yeah. Like if you give me Bit Blast, I might forget. I know it's Cascade. Is it 4 damage? Is it Sorcery? I can't remember. Little things.
Yeah, some of those weird ones with like, oh yeah, I forgot it has flying, or I forgot it had reach. There's like that one Eldrazi that everyone forgets has reach, that's 6/7 or whatever.
The World Breaker. Yeah.
That fucking thing. Jesus.
Yeah. It breaks everyone's minds as well as ours. So yeah,
that was neat. I think no question. But other ones like what is it? Time Stop. The 10th edition foil that doesn't have the reminder text.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Examples of those, people want that, and I think there's some cards that are like complicated that alterists are making full, like Goblin Charbelcher, great example. That people full art all the time because you should know what that means if you're playing that card.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you should be making a promo of, full art. Easy. And that would just be hotness for those players.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's all well and good to do a lightning bolt, but I mean, most people know what a lightning bolt is. It's quite nice to have something that feels, as you say, a little bit more tailored to your playability.
Right, and I think that you can do data on that, where they're like, what's the most popular card that represents modern?
Yeah. Like compared to how many words are written on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Do a full art questing beast. Done. Sorted. Easy.
Yeah, right. Correct. Yeah. Good luck with that. Exactly. But I think that's a healthy thing to have, that there are people like Gavin works on promos that is really listening to what people want and then trying to make a list that you slowly check off. I don't know if you've heard me yell about the tokens about this, that there's some cards that don't have tokens.
I mean, I'm someone who's obsessed with tokens, and the fact that there are some cards that don't have tokens, or ones that are like super rare, like the precons that just got printed. The Catherall deck has the Hornet Queen tokens, which haven't been printed in God knows how long. And because you need 4 of them, some people need 4 of them. Any tokens that were there got snapped up by only a quarter of the player base that had the card, and they've only just reprinted that. So I think that's something that they need to kind of push back into if they don't want to just rely on.
Great as well.
Unstable was great. Yeah,
foil effect on tokens. Like tokens are just as important. For some decks, they'll have more tokens in play than regular creatures. So obviously, it's an important thing.
Here's a question for you guys here. Like, I think that concept of Secret Lair is it's fulfilling a need they can't do quick enough in sets. And like the card Ophiomancer, right? It's a popular cube card played in a bunch of formats. It's Braid's his best friend. Everybody knows this. There's no token. There's no physical token of that.
Yeah, because it's very it's very different. It's slightly different. It's a black without Death Touch, isn't it?
It is with Death Touch.
It's with Death Touch, which makes it different from the ones that you got in the other sets. Yeah.
So finding that to fit in a set is hard, because you need to make a token producer that makes a Death Touch snake, which is a bit powerful, actually quite good.
Yeah, you could have just plonked all of your Mancer in Amonkhet and be like, here, enjoy limited. Go ahead.
Right, it'd be a blowout situation. But that's where like a master set could sneak those in, or a Secret Lair like they did with Bitter Blossom, which I think was wonderfully done.
Yeah. Oh god, the Bitter Blossom one was an example of a very needed and like well received Secret Lair for sure, because it had it had a card that was maybe not super cheap to buy. So if you're getting one, you're already thinking about spending a bit of money. But it had brilliant new art and tokens for it, and they also had the panoramic thing on there, which they seem to be doing quite a bit. And they did that in Unstable with a lot of the contraptions, like the backgrounds to those contraptions was one big panoramic. So I mean, that's another thing that they're trying out as well, which I really like to see.
Well, yeah, think about the Constellation, obviously, of artwork that came out recently. That's another good example of like one big
Jason
piece.
Ingalls.
The Jason Ingalls, yeah.
Oh my god! I'm kind of question, because this is something I couldn't find. Did they, for the extra ones that he did he just do it in little threes for the secret lair ones? He didn't do a giant constellation piece like he did with the other ones, did he? It was like
no.
threes.
Most of the, I mean, the secret lair for Dan obviously were 3. Polyptych technically is the term.
Sure, sorry, yes.
Right. If there's 2, it's a diptych. 3, it's a triptych. And if you don't know, and it's a few of them, it's a polyptych. Yeah, I own the polyptych to the Mirage Forests because there's 4 of them and they all connect.
Oh wow!
So those things are really hard to do because you need to sink one entire artist's work into them. They need to have the time, and that means 3 other artists don't get a commission.
Sure.
Right. So you need to really balance that out to say, okay, well, we want I don't know. Seb McKinnon to be working so many things. We want Sam Burley to be doing so many things. And by sinking that into it, you take away opportunities from folks. And is that needed to have this multiple image thing? Usually what they do is if it works out, they'll let them do it. Like artists will ask, hey, I got 2 pieces. Can I make them connect? Is that fine? And more often than not, they're like, yeah, totally, knock yourself out. But with like some of the specialty products, like you mentioned the unsets, those guys were on the concept push. So Rob Horsley, Chuck Lucas, Steve Prescott, they're the ones who helped design that world. So they were just working on contraptions or goblins or whatever. And they said, well, you guys are here. You've designed all these pieces. They're basically working on that giant 9-piece thing the whole time through their concept push and the art commissioning time.
Very cool. No, I like the fact that obviously you can't just have one bit and you can ignore the rest of the world around it. You have to build the little bits in between, which I guess can then obviously offer inspiration for the rest of the concept as well.
So there's this question I want to ask you guys is
sure.
Godzilla cards. How do you feel about real world stuff? And obviously we have real world flavor text. Your boy Shakespeare back in the day, we used to have him on cards.
Yeah.
But now, okay, we have a real world. There's fighter jets on Godzilla.
There's a helicopter, thing. Yeah, exactly. Well, how do
you feel, guys, about that?
If as a one-off, I like it. Stylistically, I think they look quite cool. And that's just me being my basic 5-year-old self going, clap, clap, I like the look of it, good job. I think they need to be careful, because I've got this written down. The next thing I have underwood is Star Wars next. Like, what's to stop them then from bringing other IPs from other directions and kind of what I feel like, not diluting, but it does kind of take away a little bit of the magic, not to put a pun on it.
That's straight up. I mean, they did My Little Ponies, right?
Yeah, which was fine, apparently.
They did Transformers. This has already been done.
Well, the difference is, I think, for me, visually, I have no issue with them. Like, in terms of the fact that those are the skins of real Magic cards that they kind of put over. I don't mind that there's helicopters or jets or whatever else, because that's Godzilla lore. My eye twitch, I suppose, would be at the fact that, I mean, they're in collector boosters. Is that right? That you get them in collector boosters? Or are they box toppers? How do you acquire them?
Those are in collector's boosters.
Yeah,
they're collector's boosters. The fact that they're not in a charity products like the My Little Pony, or the fact that they're not in maybe a secret lair, they could have done a secret lair where they had all of them and aggressively priced it. Do you know what I mean? Like they could have done that, and I think if they priced it aggressively enough, the people who really wanted them would get them. Whereas the comic book art style, people have kind of gone, okay, that's the showcase for this set. You find them in the regular set, and you can maybe find foil ones. They could have done that in the collector's boosters, but to have this third skin, if you like, is, I don't know. I think it's pushing it a little bit, because they've released the stained glass planeswalkers from War of the Spark. They've put those as like little extras in the secret lair. So they've technically done 3 versions of those planeswalkers, but they've done them in such they're so separate from each other that if you really want them, you can find them. Whereas I think they're all a bit too bunched in together. Just as someone who opens
that's
packs.
an interesting point. Like, that's super helpful feedback rather than I love them, I hate them. It's,
Yeah.
I like them. However, I see where this is going, where you're going to put G.I. Joe, you're going to put Star Wars, and of anything, it takes away from the specialness when you do that. And it does.
Don't do two different treatments or two alternate treatments when and the big thing for me for Ikoria is that the Godzilla side, okay, no, it's not realistic because it's Godzilla, but they took some artists that have a more like surrealist style and they made it more real worldy, and then they took the other mutate treatments and they said, well, the artist, let's go push it to a comic kind of style, a more like hand-drawn style. The fact they did both of this in the same set and they pushed both left and right, I think is kind of poor because it just leaves the rest of the set sat in the middle going, but we're here too.
Yeah, I feel that was going to be. I have like a half-finished art review, and that was it's a big reason I've been struggling to post it. Is I think one deviation is great, phenomenal. When there's two, it's too hard for new players to be like, so where do I get this? Look, you guys are in the know, and you're like, these are in the collector's boosters, are they buy a box? Can I get them in set?
Yeah.
Is it Japanese? Yeah. That confusion for an enfranchised player isn't sure as heck ain't gonna help a new player, right? They have no idea.
I also really annoys me that they still did some exclusive to country. This is only because I think the Mecha Godzilla's really pretty, and the fact that I can't necessarily get a version of it very easily, and the version I get when it's already a complicated card isn't available in English. That's where I find is the issue. There's this idea of exclusivity. If it's so difficult to get hold of, and yet you make it this attractive, it creates a weird dichotomy of where you really want something but you just can't have it. And I think that feel bad. As much for new players, it's not a big thing. But if a new player sees, say, a Biolante and goes, that is the best thing ever, I grew up on Godzilla, I really, really want it, and they find out it's a little bit harder to get, and there are two other versions that they could accidentally get instead, that might be a bit annoying.
But aren't you saying that also from a British perspective?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, the fact in general, having things that are exclusive, I think, based on region isn't a bad idea. I mean, I'm someone who's invested in a couple of the Japanese walkers, but when you do the entire fleet apart from say one or two of them, I feel like that's a bit disjointed.
I think you're right, but it's also the first time.
Yeah, so of course, yeah.
The next iteration is Grim Fairy Tales, and the variants are in Germany. How different would that feel to you?
If they did that with Eldraine, I guess that maybe I might have been more. Not actually, that's a lie. I don't know. I'm massively affiliated to Eastern culture. I absolutely.
I think but the fact that it'd be like geographically closer to us and potentially less costly to get hold of, I think it would make a difference. So I think I see what Nathan's saying. It seems like doing one or two out of a whole variant cycle, which is maybe in one place or another. But if they continue to do it, like then it will become normalized, right? And then it won't be an issue, and then they just become collector's pieces like for the rest of the world.
Was there any reason why they did do two in one? I mean, I know obviously there was probably a release of the new Godzilla film that kind of tied in and might have elevated sales or anything. But was there any particular reason why they decided to do two within the same set with two such hyper different styles instead of having everything feel a bit more integrated?
I bet there was just an opportunity too, where you could say we're going to do a monster set. What's a monster? Well, Godzilla is king of monsters, baby. Everybody knows that. And I think they looked at it to say, where else are we going to fit these in? If we want to start this partnership collaborations, which they've done, I mean, nobody questions that. This is the only time we can fit Godzilla in, and it will be a lot. However, the drawback for the complexity, and the set is incredibly complex. Like, you put a new player try to understand Mutate,
super simple.
I still don't fucking understand Mutate, and I've been playing it on Arena for like 2 weeks.
But I do think that this was their only shot in the near future to integrate them, and I think they probably said, like, they tried for a while and they finally got a yes. Oh, okay, well, let's do this live, and I think those sort of nimbleness, which making more sets more often, more frequently, even quicker, I think opens up cool opportunities like that, where Hasbro has a movie coming out, or the Transformers thing, where you could have
a Resident Evil zombie set. That would be so good.
Sure, exactly. Right.
Shotguns and magic. I don't know.
You could have an Innistrad set around Grim Fairy Tales, because
yes, you could. Yeah.
Yeah, if we came back to our drain, that would be a really good. I like that idea. Mm.
But seeing that piece of allowing for other properties in, I think lends itself to language locked things. Because frankly, I don't know much about Brazilian culture.
Sure.
Yeah, the food's delicious. Apart from that,
Yeah, right. It's fine. But like knowing their street art culture is so different and so more ubiquitous than it is in the U.S. U.S. it's a nuisance. All over
Sure.
Europe, it's street art. It's seen differently. It feels differently. And people like Philip Berberin, who is actually really famous in Czech Republic.
Oh, really?
As a street artist. Like,
Oh,
no
cool.
one knows this. Yeah, he was like one of the 3 top names of street artists there. And it's like Morka, Morka is his tag. And his stuff's everywhere. And it's really cool. But it doesn't look like anything like his other work.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at it now. It's really cool.
It's super cool. But it's not region specific to a language, right? It's not it's English, Spanish, Italian. There is no Czech or Slavic thing, and I want that to happen. I really do, where each language would get a Godzilla with traditional styles, whether it's like woodcuts in Germany or fresco paintings for the Italian version. You know, each of the areas could have a very different thing, and I think that sort of art enrichment we're right on the cusp of. I really do think that.
Yeah, because I guess you could say the homogenization of the artwork is more of a typical, Western style, and this is why when they brought in all these different manga styles for the War of the Spark, it could have been a bit polarizing. But if you can't find at least one artwork in that entire suite that you don't like, then you're being difficult. Obviously in my humble opinion. But I can imagine, I can see why if we have a certain style that we're used to shifting that into other countries, as much as it might push people away, it's also integrating things that we haven't seen before.
Exactly right.
And I think it'd be a shame not to.
All art looks the same. You know why people do that, right?
No, go on.
Okay, so when was the earliest set the two of you started playing?
Nathan, when did you start playing?
Technically, start of 1996, but realistically, say Mirrodin. Kamigawa.
My initial one was Innistrad, were the first kind of cards that I got exposed to.
So we have one old timer, if you will, and then someone. So in the 90s, we didn't have the robust TCG player. We did not have the robust singles market, right? Most people in that 93, 94, 95, even maybe up to like 97, would have to buy packs to get rares. Like that was the thing.
Yeah.
And you looked at every card that you opened. That you did. You examined each thing. And when foils were introduced, people then even looked even closer at every card. You became more knowledgeable about every card in a set because they had set collecting. Remember that? That doesn't exist anymore. Now, people don't do that.
Yeah,
people don't look at every common unless they're super into limited. And even then, you listen to what Marshall says, and you just ignore like 20 cards of every set.
Oh, I know, it's crazy. Yeah, I guess it's an injustice as well, considering how much effort every single art has put into it. The fact you don't even start from the front; you just look at the back. Did I get a good rare? And then you can even maybe drop down the rest of it without.
Right, exactly. You get like a visual spoiler. What do you go to? You go to Planeswalkers, you go to Mythics, you go to Rares. You don't start with the life gain common. You don't look at those, but that's actually where the most set building, world building is located.
Yeah.
Because they're given latitudes. Like on a Planeswalker, there's no flavor text. You don't have room for that. And every Planeswalker card is just a person standing there, right? There's nothing more to add.
And I guess, if you don't care about that side of it, then it's not necessarily something you're going to look more into. And the artwork, as you say, to most spikes, they don't care what it looks like.
Exactly. So the nostalgia thing of people opening the pack and examining every card, you got to see the variety of art styles because you looked at every card. Now, you only look at the cards that were meant to be powerful, and the brand of them has narrowed. Other than Seb McKinnon, which is finally a pushback on a branded character like the box top or like the art that's on a booster box. That's all done by Chris Morales or Magali. Guess what? Chris Morales and Magali's art style is really similar. So the first thing you see of a set is a specific style, which is digital art more realistic, that Tyler Jacobson look, and then you have to dig down to find the Nils Ham.
Yeah, the nitty
You
gritty.
need to dig for a while to see a John Stanko work because they're in commons, and that's fine. But when people say everything looks the same, it's like, well, it's because you're not looking past the rares, and I know you're not, because you're only playing constructed.
A really good example of that from Ikoria is when I was flicking through. It was Jen Ravenna's Footfall Crater. It's a common, and it had the bright pink beach with the blue sea kind of going out.
Super
It looks.
pops.
Yeah, and in a set full of color, like that one really pops out, and that's at the front of the booster packs. Like, yeah, you're 100% right. It's kind of crazy how much scope artists can be given on bits of cardboard that people don't really look at, which is why we're here. This is why the kind of Vorthos community and the flavor community, I think that's we're getting bigger, and that's why these cards are maybe getting a lot more limelight.
I think you're right. That visibility has been a much more recent push. Like I was writing since 2009, and I remember there was like 2 of us, maybe 3. And that was it. Like that was it. And now we're getting actually other podcasts, other people looking at works and interviewing, maybe not the same 5 people over and over and over again that are artists. Like I actively try to not interview everyone. They're like, please interview Seth McKinnon. I'm like, he's been interviewed 6 times for this set.
Everyone knows who Noah Bradley is. They've got his own personal email address. They don't need that.
Yeah. Exactly right. And instead I really want to find some of those weird dogs that are making crazy stuff, and they're not just one-ofs, right? If it's just a promo person, they're there and they're gone, that's fine. But I want to find some of the, Lars Grant West, how are you still making cards? How are you staying in the roster this long?
Right.
Without getting booted by some young buck. Like, that's an interesting story.
Yeah, because I've been looking today about, because I looked through basically every Ikoria promo as to the artists, as to whether they were debut, how long they've been running for, and that kind of thing. Right. And it's quite funny that a lot of the ones from Ikoria, they've not been around forever. They've obviously been around a little bit, but I like the fact they're taking established or recently establishing artists and going, okay, let's put you in some of the more promo work that people are probably going to chase. So they see your work, look at your other cards. I mean, I don't know how many people do this. Realistically, how many people look at the artists and then go and look up their other works?
I think some do. I think people are doing it right now with Ron Spencer.
Right?
Yeah, 100%.
Just came out with the new, was it Manifold?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Double Masters promo, yeah.
Everybody who's old-timey old school is like, yo, Ron Spencer!
Yeah, this is how I felt. Yeah, exactly. Because I was looking through it again, specifically for this, and being like, oh, he hasn't even done anything recently. Wait, where's this doubling season? I didn't even and it had been released like 20 minutes before I'd looked at it, and I got so angry that I'd never seen this Ron Spencer artwork, that I'd never had an opportunity to do it. That was the excitement. The fury was my excitement. So yeah, it's great that they can bring people back and do this and get people to go, oh, you didn't know about Wayne Reynolds? I mean, how you didn't know about Wayne Reynolds is beyond me, but you didn't know about Wayne Reynolds? Yeah, go and have a look at him.
He made Pathfinder, period. Like, he was the main concept artist for Pathfinder, everything. Literally every one of the key iconics are Wayne Reynolds. That's what he's doing. Where he's like, I don't need to take a magic card, I'm busy.
I've got stuff. I'm making bacon, don't worry.
I think that's more of it, of like, why can't Rebecca Gay make more works? It's like, homie, if she's making a $10,000 painting for a private commission, why is she going to accept a $1,200 commission? That doesn't make any sense. Like, at all. Like, I don't. Carla Ortiz is working on Marvel movies. You want her to make another character? Like, come on.
I guess that's what I was thinking about, because I was looking, obviously the mutate alters, the ones that are more, illustrated, the ones that look more typical comic.
Yeah, the comic book style.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You do have a lot of debuts that I was looking at, like, say, C-Octopus. I'm looking at, like, the dark, forceful style of the artwork. I'm like, I'd love to see more of this. But then looking at the fact that it's their debut, and it's specific for this kind of style, I'd love to see them trying to integrate it. As you say, I don't want it in every set in large quantities, but I would like to see a little bit of artistic diversity if we can get it. And seeing some of these debuters and seeing some of the work that they do, like, as you say, Andrew Huerta is Lord Drakus might be my favorite artwork out of that set.
That's interesting. Interesting, because well, there are 2 artworks for those comic book styles that I really like. One of them is from Tomaz, who did Deadeye Navigator, and he's done the new Nethroi, Apex of Death. That comic book art style is fantastic. But there's a guy that he's only done the three cards in this set, and all of them are the showcase ones. And that's Daniel Warren Johnson, who did Brokos, Pouncing Shark, Evercore Phoenix. Like, whilst that style, I completely agree with you guys. I wouldn't want to see it in every single set. There's definitely his color palette that he uses, the kind of heavy detail with the line work, but it all kind of mushed in together, like very sort of Vincent Proust and that kind of like heavily detailed. You have to like really look at it. I wouldn't mind seeing him come back and do something. Maybe not in a mainline set, but definitely throwing in some cards into like a Commander product or like these Jumpstart booster packs. Like they could do crazy art styles in those ones, like a mashup of things.
Right, and I think you're right in that, and we agree that the expansion of roster should be in supplemental things, additional things, promos, and maybe give us more chocolate than just vanilla there. And don't get me wrong, I like the same roster doing the promo card, sure, but that's where this is their really only opportunity for them to sneak them in more often. So why aren't we doing that more often?
Yeah, because I was looking at the general style, and it's funny that for all of the Godzilla versions, they almost they take the artist's work, and a lot of them do things that are more realistic, but they almost kind of have to temper their style to be a little bit more realistic. Whereas with these Mutate ones, they temper their style to be a little less realistic, and I like that, like taking artists being able to push their style, maybe as far as they want to go, but also kind of because obviously they clearly had. They had remits for this. They clearly went with the showcase cast for Eldraine. We want something more illustration. We want harder lines. We want softer, washed out watercolors. And I like the fact they are telling people and telling artists, a fleet of artists, going, we all kind of want you to do this same kind of style, and then seeing what we can get out of them, because it allows them to push the envelope a little bit more.
The Eldraine artworks were really good for opening up artists that have already had a few Magic commissions under their belt to do something maybe that they want to do or try something different. Like, so I mentioned Jen Ravenna. She did the Footfall Crater, really heavy colours, but then she also did the showcases for Murderous Rider and Hypnotic Sprite, which were ink and sort of illustration. Elena Danner is another one which I was blown away to find. Giant, really she did Realm Cloak Giant and Lonesome Unicorn, which are kind of fall between Nils Hamm and Sam McKinnon, that kind of washout style Rebecca Gay. But she also got commissioned to do the Snowlands for the Secret Lair, completely different, and I like that. I like that they're opening up the box.
Will. Like Supreme Will is a nothing card, and you look at the artwork. Oh my god, the artwork's fantastic! And I
it's crazy.
But the fact that they do choose some artists based on for promo products and things as well. But yeah, seeing them kind of get a little bit again, like it's almost flexing their muscles. Like, oh, how can I stretch my wings and do something a little bit outside of my wheelhouse? I think again, this is a perfect way to do. And we didn't. We had no idea. Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is happening more and more with folks, where they're like, "Hey, I got a piece of my portfolio. Check it out, art director. Could I ever make a Magic card like this? And Philip's great example. Could I make street art that feels more similar or Kev Walker, where he straight up just made like comic book art with the new Atraxa, and that's great.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I think those pieces, we're going to see a lot more people that instead of forcing themselves into that center of bullseye will be, oh, this is what I actually make art more normally, my personal work. And then once you see that super good, art director's like, well, why didn't you give me this? And they're like, well, I thought you wanted me to look like that. And they're like, no, fine, but do that, man. And some of that is someone being new.
Of course.
You have less chances to risk and flex. I talked to Howard about this, and for his Enlightened Tutor work, the book is there, and he added the birds to it. And that wasn't part of the art description.
Wow, really?
He said, hey, I know this references another card. Can I add this to this? And they're like, well, it doesn't do it past Enlightened Tutor. He's like, no. It does the other tutor, the idyllic tutor that I made. Could I add that in there? And a new artist wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable doing that because they fear they're going to get yelled at and they won't get called back. But once you've had a couple cards under you, that's where this community, people pointing these things out and celebrating it, gives artists confidence as to add Easter eggs or references to decks or things of the sort in the art. As long as we really celebrate it, I think they'll keep doing it.
Yeah, there's nothing better than Treasure Napper, who has like all the different little trinkets throughout Magic's history hidden into the artwork. Yeah, things like that. Very, very good. Obviously, anything that makes you look more at the piece of artwork is fantastic.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
So we've got not got much time left. I just wanted to ask before we kind of wrap up over the next sort of 10 minutes. We've seen them throw a lot of proverbial shit at the wall, and a lot of it is stuck. Like quite thankfully, like we had the full art Theros lands. We've had all these different kinds of borders, what have you. They've deconstructed the idea of what Magic can look like. Heading into maybe not this year, but maybe next year and the year after, is there any directions which you think they should go in? Is there any directions that you're worried that they might start going down? Anything that you think they might put more stock in than they should in the sort of Magic art, or do you think it's all like more art is just more art? Do you think it's all good or none of it's good? Like, what's your kind of take on the future?
I think there's a worry that as they expand the brand, the new Legends game, the Netflix series, other major aspects, that they may find themselves stuck and not being able to respond to demand. And very specifically, the way Pokemon became so popular as a card game is because they got a 30-minute introduction every week.
Mm.
I suppose, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So Magic will have to have a through line to say, hey, you engage this other property. You need to see something of that other property in the thing to collect your eye, and to advertising, whatever. And Hasbro's super good at that, okay? Magic less so, because that's not how you're introduced to play Magic. You're introduced to play Magic by other Magic players. Like, that's really weird and really unique. So I think there is a huge worry about if they made a fully anime, gritty, Planeswalker, Adult Swim, After Dark show.
Sure.
Don't tease me. Don't you tease me with these things.
Right. And that's been discussed forever. I mean, that was around 15 years ago that people talked about it. With the really explosion of when Dragon Ball started to play late at night. I think that worry is they're moving on changing art styles quickly now, but it's not quick enough for other branded properties that are down the pipeline, that are just out of reach. So finding that where you could see like a Magic Legends where it's like a 3D modeled character on a card like they do for WoW or whatever, we don't have that yet because it's still 2 steps away. So I think they were going to have to really think mindfully of how you move from A to B, because you want people engaged in all parts of your brand. That's the first thing. The second thing is that the story is kind of over now.
God, don't say that. I know. It does feel like that.
Start of a new story.
No, it's over. And the reason it's over is that they can't stick to a plan anymore. Like, the novels are done. They promoted it and then they didn't. There was ebooks, there was comic books, then promoted, then canceled.
Exactly.
And the large mega story, the War of the Spark thing, is over. So there are only 2 storylines that still need to be told, right? Everything else has been told because we just got back to Theros. We got Elspeth out of Theros.
You referenced we to finish off Emrakul.
Yep. Emrakul is still sitting, which is just a plot line like any good cartoon TV show.
Pick it up whenever you wanted to.
Never need it. The same goes for Phyrexia, because Koth is there hanging out. We don't know what he's doing.
I hope so. God, he's going to be, his gains over the last few years must be huge.
Yeah, he's going to be jacked.
Just lifting gargantuans daily.
Right? We see that with Blightsteel Colossus, that, humans are still alive. Oh, okay. So that's one piece we have to return to. The second thing is people want to go to Lorwyn, but the story is told. It's over.
They won't go back there. They've done Eldraine. They've got Eldraine now if they want to tell whimsical fairy tales.
They're going to go back there.
You think so?
Why would you do a promo of Bitter Blossom?
Again, it's the teaser. I agree. I think it's funny that they did something like Eldraine though, because stylistically you could tie them two together. But then, arguably, it's funny you mentioned him earlier. Like Omar definitely has his foot firmly pressed on the neck of the art style for Lorwyn, and I like that. If you're confident they're going back, I'd be very happy to do.
You guys got to look at the signals, man. Like, we have new Phyrexia to go to. We have we're going back to Zendikar. Right? You got to figure that out. We can go back to Innistrad. We can go back to Zendikar. Just got done. We can go back to New Phyrexia, Lorwyn. Don't you think it odd that there's a black merfolk in Theros? There's only one set that's had black merfolk in Magic's
history. Triton. Yeah, the Seb McKinnon artwork. Yeah, little. Yeah.
You don't think it's odd that it's also Seb McKinnon that made on a random comment? Those should stand out to you guys. Like, they really should.
I'll believe it when I see it. As you say, like the story's done, and they've already done the fairy tale set. Like that's just my kind of doubt.
I imagine if we come back, it's going to have to be something not radically different stylistically, but at least different enough that it doesn't just feel like a retreading of fairy tales. If it can tell its own story about how the Aurora's changed, like I think that's enough to have some grip into. But also, if they're not playing these big, wide arcs, they don't need something huge to grab the audience. It can be something superfluous.
You have it exactly on point. That's exactly it. Is you don't have a multi-layered storyline anymore. You're wrapping up every loose end that you have. War of the Spark really locked up a lot of them. Then you can sneak over to Lorwyn for a set, and you're like, haha, great. Same with going to Ikoria here. We're stopping in, intro, cool. Okay, we can come back anytime. That returnability saves time. You don't have to have a brand new concept push. You don't need to rebuild it from the ground up. Yeah, you want to keep it open that you can return rather than it being done.
So all I'm taking away from this is a guarantee we're going to Kamigawa. Is it your guarantee we were going to Kamigawa? If we hit Lorwyn, if we don't hit Kamigawa, that's fury-inducing.
I want Kamigawa to be the a little bit of here and there. I think like a whole commander sets of just Kamigawa flavored, where you, instead of cultivate, you have Kamigawa cultivate. I think would be the coolest thing. Reflavored, reskinned.
They're trying that out with characters like the Wanderer, right? Where they just have one artwork every set or so where she just kind of pops up and pops away. Like they're definitely doing these little drip drop storytelling sort of techniques.
Where you have backdoors to say like, why is this person here? How is this shaking out? And those sort of things that we always love seeing. I mean, that was the original Mirrodin. Of this oil's here. Like I have the books. I can pull out the quote. Let's straight up. I'm like, oh. Phyrexian oil right here. Like this is the line.
yeah. It's like the whole Ugin thing.
Of how do you return a Tarkir? It's going to be tough.
Do you? Which one do you go? And this, because this is something we talked about. It's like this idea of obviously if we're sticking canonically in terms of like a linear timeline, which I don't think they'll deviate from, it does kind of shoot the foot in a lot of planes because they do have to have these big world-changing events, and sometimes it changes your world into somewhere that you may not be able to necessarily easily come back to or make as familiar as it was before. This is why I'm interested about the Zendikar return. I don't know what more they could do to ruin it. But
this is true, but they did do a whole core set where they told the tales of a Tarkir timeline, but without it necessarily being in a continuity that they'd have to build a whole set around completely. Like they can do these different storytelling techniques,
Well, we don't have a ton of time, but I want to leave you guys with one thing since you're on Tarkir. There's 2 cards that I hope caught your eye in Ikoria about Tarkir. First is, Narset, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, of the old way. Who was only mentioned barely in the book.
Of the ancient ways. And the art to it is from Yongye Choi, and specifically, we asked him on Twitter to say she looks older here. That's interesting, and he said, "Yes, you are correct. I was specifically asked to make her look older by art directors, by the people there, right?" And you're like, "Okay, well, that's fine, cool, whatever." But then you look at the card Whirlwind of Thought, right, where this idea of she is learning the red of the Jeskai, right? She's learning that thing about her. She's young here.
Yeah.
Why I didn't so intentional?
So have we got 2 different Narsets jumping about then, do you think? We've still got...
This is the ongoing Vorthos behind the scenes.
So the Azorius one is potentially the one who's more learned, taking her time to get there. The Ancient Way, the Whirlwind of Thought's the one who's still being all free spells off the top of your library. Nice.
Or the other way around. This is the Azorius one who's learning the red, and Narset of the Ancient Way is the one who's...
Oh, is it? Sorry, it would be. Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
So that piece right there of it's hidden in plain sight. If you don't look at the art, if you're not talking to the artist, if you miss that tweet, you'll be like, haha, it's just different artist stylization things. But really, you got to be like, wait, I think there's 2 Narsets.
Yeah, it was like the Kithian flavor text in, and like, I can't remember the defense. It's one of the cards from Theros, and you can even see like, wait, but that's very similar to Gideon's name. And then obviously the next set, Origins, comes out, and we realize, oh, it was the same guy. Yeah,
exactly right.
Well, amazing. Well, like that's not only blown my mind, but I feel a little bit schooled right now. I don't know about you, Nathan.
yeah, there are 2 Narsets on Ikoria. You heard it here.
Yeah. That's
just
amazing.
Going around buddy copying. I want that as a series.
Yeah.
Or Narset buddy cop. done.
This is double. Nathan, they're just releasing a double masters set. We're going to get 2 nasty.
Good God. Oh,
There
it's
we
all
go.
falling together. It's like they have a plan. Crazy.
Exactly. Well, like, look, we're coming up to time now. Mike, this has been absolutely phenomenal talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a real joy. Where can they find you if they want to get more of Vorthos Mike? Like, how can people find your stuff?
Sure. Best way is Google literally Vorthos Mike, and I pop up. Archive over at Cool Stuff Inc., which always has good fun stuff on art. Twitter all the time at Vorthos Mike. People can just drop me a question. Hey, I'm looking for this thing. Who do I talk to about this? Always happy to help folks out when they're friendly. And I encourage people to just look at the art, enjoy the things, and then tell the artists so. They don't always get to hear people overjoyed from it unless they see you in person, but they can't see you in person right now. So send them a note. They'd appreciate it.
Nice one. Excellent. Yeah, completely. Guys, if you want to get in contact with us, our Twitter is at mtflavouring. Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. You can find my personal Twitter at AndyManface. Nathan, you're at
the Fox in the Moon.
At Fox in the Moon. And guys, as ever, as always, thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.